And welcome in to the Bobby Carpenter Show, presented right here on the Big Play Network. Got my guy Anthony Schlegel here, and we're going to talk a little college football. We're going to review the games in the Big Ten. We'll preview the Buckeyes as they welcome in the Maryland Terrapins, and they have an updated kick time for that. And there's also going to be a sweet event, Schlegs, that we'll get into that I'm not even sure if you're fully aware of that will be transpiring. We got the top stories from around college football. Deion Sanders, people say that they've seen too much of him. Have they? And how did it look against USC, a team that ranked in the top 10? Could Colorado keep pace, or would they get blown out again by a superior opponent? We got all that coming to you this week. So Ohio State was off.
Yep.
Guys got to get away, relax a little bit, recharge the batteries. Were you able to recharge your batteries on this Ohio State off week, if you will?
Oh, man, my battery's always recharged, Bob. You know me, when I like to recharge my battery, I go to the farm and I just get out there and watch the world wake up, and deer season opened up. What a perfect weekend if the guys like to go hunt. Deer season opened up in the great state of Ohio on the 30th, I believe, Saturday. So great way of recharging. I'm excited to get in here and start digging in, talking about Big Ten football and Ohio State football.
Absolutely. And
how about you, man? What'd you do, bro?
Well, we started off, got to see you on Thursday night last week at the big NIL event.
Talk about that, man.
Yeah, to raise money for the Ohio State football, men's and women's basketball programs. Kevin McGuff, Chris Holtman, Ryan Day were all there. And it was great to kind of see Ryan in that element, relaxing a little bit, kicking back. And, you know, you have the hustle and bustle of the season. The coach is always so stressed out. So to see them with their wives there and to be able to kind of downshift, and especially for Ryan to enjoy, 1 week off or weekend off. I know they've got recruiting. The head coaches don't get out, but a lot of the assistants get out.
Right.
But it was great. I went down, Portsmouth, Ohio. We got a little river house on the Ohio River down there and got everything set up. And I'll tell you this, nothing is more stressful than when you're trying to get the internet and everything set up because the games are on. And you know me, Schlegs, I don't really handle adverse situations when things aren't going according to plan. I know, pretty crazy. So myself and the missus were maybe had a little friction going at it because you know what? I'm doing my part. I got the TV mounted on the wall. I'm ready to quad box it on YouTube TV. And all we're getting is some internet spinning and things aren't working quite as well as they should. So not exactly a great situation to say the least. And so we got it. We did get it figured out, but I did miss, some of the games in the middle part of that afternoon window. But some great stuff there. We had Notre Dame at night, Texas and Kansas earlier in the day. The Big Ten slate. Did you get the Penn State Northwestern game, 10-10 in the second quarter? And Penn State, which has looked pretty good on offense most of the year with Drew Aller, was really struggling to find themselves in that first half.
Yeah, so I did catch a little bit of it. And Northwestern in that first half was giving them everything that they could handle. And part of that is offensively, Penn State right now, they look to be somewhat one-dimensional. Right now, here's the thing. What do? You make great second half adjustments, and they came out, and then they up blowing out Northwestern. And that's what you have to do. But that's really where they are. They are a running team. And so, again, as you look forward to that game, Penn State, October 21st, what do? You take a Belichick thing, coach's thing. It doesn't matter who does it, but you take away their greatest threat. And for Penn State right now, it seems their greatest threat is being able to run the football, make them one-dimensional, make, their quarterback beat you, Aller. So, I like watching it when you have Northwestern. Again, they lost their head coach. They're handling a lot of adversity. They come in and it's 10-10. You got that type of game. Penn State responded in the second half, but their biggest strength is their running game.
They did. And they wound up Singleton a little bit. Second half, like you said, made the adjustments, are able to get it going and get a push in a big way. And also a game that I was kind of watching more than I thought I would, and it was never really close. I mean, it's 27-3 at half. Maryland, Indiana, that'll be Ohio State's upcoming opponent, and trying to do a little advanced scouting and metrics and checking that out. Obviously Indiana, not a ton to write home about. This passing attack for the Terrapins, with Tualea Tagovailoa, Tua's brother. Very talented quarterback, threw for over 350 yards. They've got a nice little stable of receivers there as well. And these Terrapins look pretty good. It should be a pretty nice matchup in the shoe on Saturday.
So here's the thing. I mean, they're ranked 29th nationally, total yards. They're ranked. We'll get into more of this. Rushing, their 64th. Passing is really what they hang their hat on. But he threw what do you throw? 13 receptions to 2 guys, and that they rushed for 120. So Felton had 7 receptions for 134, 3 touchdowns, and Jones had 6 of his 24. So more than half of the balls are going to those 2 guys. So you kind of know what they are, right? If you stop the run, make them one-dimensional again, those are the 2. And as we preview this later, I feel really good about this. And we'll break it down more, Bob, but I'm with you. Like, I was trying to do a little bit of advanced scouting. I like what I see from Maryland. They're 5-0. Fox Big Noon kickoff is going to be in the shoe. It should be an exciting game coming off a bye week. I'm excited for the test.
And then Jim Harbaugh returns. He's on the sidelines at Michigan now, back there settling in. And they mollywop Nebraska, man.
Oh my gosh. I like how you said mollywop. Yeah,
that's
did.
what
they
it was.
Them.
Did you see?
Yeah, it was terrible.
Did you see the game? I mean, they basically were doing more or less whatever they wanted. I thought Nebraska had a pretty good defense, and you got JJ McCarthy. They didn't really throw it a ton with him, but he did throw for 2 touchdowns and a little over $150. But my goodness, they rushed the ball, Schlegs, for nearly 250 yards. And if there was one thing I thought Nebraska was good at, was being able to stop the run, tough, physical, all those things that we like to say. And my goodness, they did not seem to have any of that stuff going on Saturday afternoon.
I am a little perplexed as to, I thought Matt Rule coming in would be able to, and again, we think those things, right? But it also has to do with personnel, the quarterback position. They've had some issues turning the ball over. And then when you're on the field all the time because you're 30% on 3rd down, which Nebraska was 3 of 10, right? And they only had 10 first downs total.
Yep.
That's going to put, first off, it's going to put your defense on the field a lot, which then the run just keeps pounding you. And eventually you break, and they broke in that game. And that's what happens when you get beat 45-7.
Yeah, that's it was a beatdown of epic proportions. So Michigan's looking good. They're still ranked 2nd in the country. Ohio State sitting there at 4, Penn State at 6. And then you have the trio of USC, Washington, and Oregon sitting there right behind everybody. I mean, those teams will all be in the Big Ten next year. And if you think about it, that would be 6 teams in the top 10. Obviously, they're not here this year, still out west, but my goodness, it is going to be a loaded schedule with everybody that they've got coming. So this is it's exciting stuff. And you felt like without Ohio State playing, you could really dive in, explore everything, and see what was going on. Big Ten looking pretty darn good as everyone continues to hold serve, at least in the East. The West, a little bit of a mess. Just a note, Purdue takes down Illinois 44-19, Iowa over Michigan State in what was a pretty ugly game. Setting offensive football backwards. Yes, not a pretty one by any stretch. But let's take a quick commercial break. After this, Schlegs and I, we're going to break down the little ins and outs, what we need to know for the Buckeyes to be able to get done against Maryland. What will be the matchups, where to attack, the strengths, the weaknesses, all that coming up next. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show right here on the Big Play Network. And welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show featuring my man Anthony Schlegel on the Big Play Network. Ohio State coming off their off week, had a little bit of rest, taking on the Maryland Terrapins. A game early in the season, probably Schleg's not a lot of people were overly concerned about, but this Maryland team has found a way to make it to this game 5-0. Now, if you look at the last couple of years, Mike Loxley has had the Terrapins play pretty well to start the season. They've done a good job opening up, usually start the non-conference slate undefeated, maybe win a game or two there early on. They have struggled mightily, though, in the second half of the year. And usually it comes at the start of the Big Ten, Schlegs, where they get a hold. A couple of years ago was Iowa. Maybe you play in Ohio State and Michigan, Penn State. They get beat up pretty good in the season. They get injured, and the season begins to spiral on them a little bit. So, we'll start off here. What are we expecting for the Buckeyes coming out of this bye week? Like a couple of different notes with Ryan Day. Ohio State's 3-0 out of bye weeks. You look last year, they take down Iowa 54-10, Indiana 54-7, and then in 2019, 52-3 there was no bye week, obviously, in 2020. So Ryan Day pretty good coming off these off weeks. It's a little bit of an earlier one, very physical opponent. How does that impact? How do you think they'll open up against Maryland?
Well, here's the thing. We talk about what do they got to do, right, off the bye week, get healthy. Well, that's neither here nor there in all of this, because you still got to go play a game, and guys that are a little bit dinged up, right? Are they going to play as much? And that's kind of a neat basis because, again, you should be able to handle Maryland. But get healthy, play calling.
When you say handle Maryland, Schlegel, is that a trenches thing? So I feel like that's where we've been the best against Maryland. They've had some good skill players over the years, but like since Urban got here, it felt like up front we were really able to get it done.
And that's, Bob, that's a great point. You remember the 18 game, right? So we beat Maryland on an average by 34 points a game. We're 8-0 versus Maryland. Okay.
Pretty good.
Yeah. 18 though, 52-51. And like, why did we play them so close? Even last year, that game went down into the fourth quarter where we said, man, we really should have handled Maryland. And to your point, yes, they always have some pretty good skill positions, but in these type of games versus a team that really doesn't run the football, right? You have to be able to make them one-dimensional. And I believe this year, and you said it too, being able to handle, everybody talks about toughness. Like this thing has gone crazy about what is toughness, but I think too much of it is we look at, all right, are they stopping the run? Well, why aren't they stopping the run? Oh, they're just not tough. No, that's false. Because if you go back and you look at some of the defenses of Ohio State over the last 5 or 6 years, a lot of those big run games have been schematics, right? It's like we're putting our guys in bad position. That's not on the toughness of the program, the way the guys are trained, etc. Right? They're in bad positions. I remember that Maryland game, Bob. Remember they were like 3 yards off the ball. Remember that? Like you and I were texting back and forth. This is 5 years ago. I remember saying that to you. It's absolutely crazy.
They were running some stuff, some insert. There's just gaps that were open. I mean, when you have a running back that hits the line of scrimmage, does not break stride for 5 more yards past it, like that's either A, guys are getting cut out of their gaps, or B, guys don't know where to fit, and it's a schematic thing, or maybe you're getting out schemed with some shifts and motions. By the way, programming note, attention offensive coordinators, if you go watch college football or in the NFL, shifts in motions give defenses problems. It forces guys to readjust and then communicate. And if sometimes you don't do it, and all of a sudden, poof, there's a big play because guys fail to talk and they stand there beside each other. It's like a couple of mimes. Like they don't even look over. Like give someone a signal, let them know where you're at, let them know what's going on. And so they were shifting and motioning a lot that year, and that caused them some problems. So
hey Bob, just so all the little coaches out there that are thinking about this, the reason they do that, guys, is Bob, they want to make you communicate 3 times. I learned that from Man Genius, right? Who came from Belichick. That's what they want to do offensively. You set the front, you reload the front, and then you motion. That's 3 checks that we all have to get to be able to be on the same page. That's communication gets broken down in one of those 3 areas, you're going to have an opportunity. That's why. Keep going.
I like that. And so that's something that they had done before. So hopefully we get to see a little bit more of that from our offense. The matchup I'm really excited to see. I mean, you look at this defense from Ohio State. Maybe they haven't had all the sacks and they haven't had the pressure that we would have liked to see from the defensive front. I believe that will come.
Bob, listen, right now, I read this today. College Football Film Room said they are the number 1 opponent adjusted pressure rate generated, which means they're getting pressure. They're just not getting sacks.
Not sacks. Okay.
Not sacks. So they are getting pressure. It's like, hey, hold the phone, because we want to see the stats, right? Like Maryland, I believe, has 13 sacks on the year. Now, granted, they just had 3 versus Indiana, but they have 13 on the year. We have 5 through 4 games. Like, right, that's not acceptable. They are getting pressure. All right, but now it has to lead into sack generation.
Yeah, that's brutal. Only 5 sacks. But like you said, if you're creating pressure, it means the ball's coming out.
Yes.
It's disrupting the timing of the throws. And so this defense has played well. But really what I've liked is the back end and their experience now. Everybody on this team basically was a starter last year somewhere. David Igbenuson's, starting at Ole Miss, but Jordan Hancock, he's a starter. He's played a lot of football. Look at Denzel Burke, starter, played a lot of football. Then Lathan Ransom played a lot of football. Josh Proctor's been here for 17 years, maybe only 6, but it's a lot. So
longer than me.
Yeah, it's experience matters. And Sonny Styles is the lone guy who's really kind of a first year.
Yeah.
But with that, like he played 40 or 50 snaps against Georgia and the Peach Bowl against the best team in the nation last year and held his own. So I'm excited. They've got some talented receivers at Maryland. These guys can work now. They're going to be able to get it done. I mean, Felton and Jones, they've got a plethora. They'll spread the ball. Tagovailoa will spread it around to Alea. He's pretty good. So I want to see this secondary and how they're going to be able to lock them down, because this Maryland offense, like, they've been explosive. They've scored a ton of points.
Yeah, they have scored a ton of points. And, the biggest thing that I see from them is once we're able to stop the run, then we can affect the quarterback, because he's obviously, and we see that in college football, We saw in the USC Colorado game. We'll break that down. You have a lot of guys that are very talented. You mentioned the 3 teams from the Pac-12 coming into the Big Ten. We'll see how they are next year when they come in, because they're all going to be losing their quarterback. It's a quarterback-driven college football game. It's a quarterback-driven NFL game. So in Maryland, their biggest threat is Tagovailoa. So if you stop the run, you get them to 3rd and long, right? You don't give up those 1st and 2nd downs and make it 3rd and manageable, but you get them to 3rd and long. Now you can start teeing off, and you can do what you want to do to those key weapons of theirs, because you know where the ball is going. So you're going to have to make them check it down or do something different that they're not necessarily used to, and you can really tee off on that. But that's, again, we talk about complementary football, but it's also complementary defense. So you got to be able to put yourself in the position on 1st and 2nd down to be successful on 3rd down. And we see that's the key, man. If we get them off the field on 3rd down, that gives another possession to our offense. Tua
also leads the Big Ten in yardage and in TDs, almost 1,500 yards, 13 touchdowns thrown. And so we flip to the other side, the guy that he'll be pitting off against, Kyle McCord.
Yep.
Looked good. Obviously, the clutch drive we talked about, it's been documented against Notre Dame. What does that do? Do you feel like we'll see a different Kyle now and a different Ryan maybe calling plays against the Maryland defense that I don't think is as good as their offense, but they're better up front, Schlegs, than what they've been? You mentioned some of the sacks and their ability to get after it. I think they'll probably try to pressure Kyle a little more, but does he have that confidence now with Ryan, from Ryan, to be able to push the football?
I say this, over a week like this is where you can do a self audit as to what your identity wants to be moving forward.
Reflection.
A reflection. Actually, we call it introspection, right? So self-introspection on a play caller perspective. But I think Kyle's going to come into this game with more confidence. And Maryland's defense is better. I think they're giving up 10 points a game less than where they were last year. But guess what? They played Townsend, Charlotte, Virginia, Michigan State, and Indiana. Okay, so Townsend, FCS, all the other ones, 5-15 total. So the competition hasn't been great for them. So let's take it with a grain of salt as to what we see. But here's the thing. Coming off that win of Notre Dame, and guess what? Side nugget, hard to win on the road versus good teams. We saw Notre Dame go do that. Duke gave them everything they had on the road. It's just a good win. We'll talk about it later. But I think Kyle now has grown in that he became the man. He let his team down.
It's grower versus shower, Schlegs.
100%. And guess what? That last game, he grew and showed. Okay,
that's right.
So I think he's going to come out with that confidence. And these 2 weeks starts to get that timing with the receivers. Now, again, Marvin had the ankle, but Emeka's still fine. But it's just the route combos and how they break out of it. And we have such a deep staple of wide receivers. That's what I think we're really going to start to see in this. But also we're able to lean on the run and get a little bit more balanced attack, which I think is what Ryan kind of wants to do. But because the thing is, what we saw last week, we can win it in multiple ways because our defense played outstanding. And when we had to, we got it on the ground, 61-yard touchdown. Stretch zone, we hit it outside, and then throwing the ball to Marvin for 18 and Emeka for 21. So it's there. I just think that we just got to keep taking one more step every single week, one more step. Then we have this test 5-0, Fox Big Noon kickoff, boom, the week after, and then we got Penn State, right? We keep taking those steps, man. That's what you got to do to be a great team, because you want to be at your peak when it matters, and that is the game.
Before we get out, real quickly, Marvin's health, his ankle. I think he's fine. Any concerns with your mind? I mean, he looked good when he came back in the game. I'm fairly certain, from what I've seen, that I think he's going to be fine. So not overly concerned there. And the last piece, the over-under for this game, point total 55.5 points. Do you like that? Does that seem kind of high? Like, I feel like Ohio State's offense is going to open it up, but I'm telling you, I feel like our defense is not going to let this Maryland team just run wild and score the football.
I don't think so either, Bob. I kind of want to take the over on that. To your point, though, I think this type of game, depending on how it goes early, you're going to see a lot of rotation.
Yeah.
Whether it's on the D-line, whether it's at the linebacking core, whether it's – the areas where we have to have depth later in the season, these next 2 games are the weeks where you can start to rotate some guys in to actually see what you got. Remember, guys that are redshirted or whatever, they still get 4 games. So I think you're going to see a lot more rotation in that in Marvin, but the game is going to dictate that, because at the end of the day, you got to win the game.
Well, we're going to come back. We're going to rotate around the world of college football, see what happened, what impacted Ohio State, what impacted all the national rankings. We'll take a quick commercial break. We got that coming up next right here on the Bobby Carpenter Show on the Big Play Network. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show on the Big Play Network with my man, Anthony Schlegel. We're going to go around the world of college football now, find out some of the games, the happenings, what was impactful, how it impacted Ohio State, the national rankings. In Colorado, USC, huge game, big noon kick in Colorado. USC coming out there at 10 a.m. Schleg's local time kick. Didn't start off well for the Buffaloes. USC jumped out, I believe, to a 28-7, 21-7 lead. Looked like he was going to get away from him, just like the Oregon game. But give Coach Prime credit. They battled back, they scored, and they weren't able to recover the onside kick. But if they had, they would have had a chance to go down and tie it. So lose this one ultimately 48-41, but it had a much different feel than that Oregon game did 2 weeks ago.
Well, yeah, I mean, first off, resilient. They battled back. I think at one time they were down 41-14, Bob. So it's absolutely crazy. The comeback that they had, that's twofold, right? His son, the quarterback, played phenomenal. Williams, obviously, for USC played phenomenal, but what it showed was an Achilles heel that USC has had, and that's defensively being able to give up that amount of points in that short amount of time span. So when you walk away from that, yes, Colorado was resilient. Is everybody talking about Colorado? Yeah, because Prime's doing some things there. He's a disruptor. He's doing some things that draws people attention. And they did a really good job of learning from Oregon, coming again, playing at home makes a difference. And they were able to come back and make it an onside kick type of game to go to overtime. USC obviously got the one, but they have an Achilles heel right now, and their Achilles heel is their defense.
Yeah. And, Colorado defense, not great. USC defense, not great. And so that's the one thing you start looking at the Pac-12. Oregon, I think, is probably the most complete team out there. They can run it, they can throw it, and they can play a little bit of defense. So that's big for them. Another big game out west, Kansas and Texas. And Kansas was ranked. They were coming off a big win against BYU. They beat Texas a couple years ago. Last year, got beat up pretty good, 40-14. Never really as close as it felt. I mean, it was 13-7 at half, but then they come out and open up a pretty nice third and fourth quarter. But Texas, I think they might be right now playing the best football of anybody in the country.
Yeah, we'll talk about them in the big games. They got a big one coming up this week. But here's the thing, to go to Lawrence, Kansas, and do that on that stage, both teams ranked, and then go 40 and win 40-14 says a lot. And again, they carried the momentum that they've had from the Alabama win. And that is, it starts with defense. Quinn Ewers, I think he threw for 325, had a touchdown, had a pick. But they rushed the football, man. I mean, who was it? Brooks had over 218 yards and 2 touchdowns. That's really the backbreaker there. So when you look at teams like this that are complete, they can throw it, they can run it. Again, it's against Kansas, but they're 24th in the country for a reason. But you go on the road and win decisively like that. Again, that's just momentum. They have Alabama. Now they just beat Kansas. Now they got OU in the Red River Shootout.
Yeah, we'll get into that because that's going to be a big one coming up. A game that I think a lot of people were dialed in on. Down in Raleigh-Durham, Duke welcoming in Notre Dame. Notre Dame obviously coming off the heartbreaking loss to Ohio State. And this one for Notre Dame felt a lot like the inverse for Ohio State, where Notre Dame was kind of controlling it. All of a sudden, Duke takes the lead, and then Notre Dame is forced to put together a drive at the end, and one in which Sam Hartman, was it 4th and 13, scrambles.
4th and 16, Bob.
Even better. Put 3 more yards on there for him. The Just for Men beard and hair commercial man looking solid, scrambling out there, and give him credit, dude. He's played a lot of football. He showed tremendous poise towards the end of that game. And then Audric Estime rips off the long run and kind of just basically puts that thing on ice on Riley Leonard. Unfortunately, that, it hurts his ankle, but that was a game I think that was huge for Ohio State, because you want to have Notre Dame be your backstop should anything happen. And the better they are, the better it is for the Buckeyes.
Yeah, and they play Clemson later on in the year. They're going to play USC, obviously. So again, I mean, they have some opportunities to capture some big wins. And at the end of the day, you want them to be a one-loss team. But let's go back though. Again, toughness right there. Toughness is not necessarily just running the football and stopping the run. 95 yards, 10 plays, 4th and 16. I got to do what I got to do. They're all drop back in zone. He saw a soft spot. I'm going to go get that first down. Hartman did it. And then 2 plays later, Estime ran for 30-yard touchdown, right? Like that's toughness. That's what you have to do, especially after coming off of last week. I mean, I was like, man, hats off, Marcus. And he was just so juiced for his guys to be able to pull that out after what happened last week. Again, Every week is different. Every week you have to be up for it. And in that game, Bob, Duke missed 2 field goals. Notre Dame missed a field goal. All these games, when it's good on good,
superior special units.
man,
That's the key.
It's critical. We talked about it last week in the Ohio State game. There's so many opportunities in a game that you have to make an impact. And we saw that in Notre Dame. The guy had an opportunity to pick it on the last drive. We had an opportunity for a touchdown. There's all these different variables. Special teams was critical in this game. So, and then in a 4th and 16 stop and you don't get it, right? So that's kind of demoralizing. And then 2 plays later, they punch it in. So again, great win for Notre Dame. Great for the Buckeyes on the national landscape because we want them to continue to win throughout the season.
Can you explain to me in 1 minute what happened with Trent Dilfer during his game down there with UAB and Tulane?
So I watched this. I wasn't necessarily watching the game, but listen, real quick, he absolutely went off on his coaches. And there was an illegal substitution. And I understand going off on your coaches, right? It's like, if a kid's not spotting properly, like the weight room, things will kill you. Sometimes we got to go off and make a point, but then you also got to step back. The longer you do it, the less of impact it is, and it becomes a little bit resentful. It was crazy. I think it took a lot of attention away from what needed to get done in that game and was focused back on him. Again, in meetings like this, I guarantee you Trent Dilfer, being a pro, understanding coaches, probably had a meeting with his staff and probably apologized to his staff, which is the only people he needs to apologize to. But like, the standard is the standard. Why didn't we get these things done? Because ultimately it's about our kids being able to compete. But it was a bad representation, I think, of what he is as a coach. And it was just live on TV and everybody's been talking about it.
Great job, Schlegs. Coming up, we're going to look at some of the big games going on around the world of college football, Red River, and many, many more. That's next here on the Bobby Carpenter Show on the Big Play Network. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show on the Big Play Network. We're going to take a walk around the world of college football and the big games that'll be coming to you here, Schlegs, as you run, you're sprinting around, going back, and we'll start with the premier one in your hometown.
Yep.
At the Texas, it's not this Texas State Fair anymore, is it? Now they have
it
the Jerry World. Still there?
Well, it should be there because that was a great venue. I remember playing in the Cotton Bowl in high school, and it was like the best grass of all time, and it's outside. I absolutely love the fairgrounds and playing there. I don't know. They probably played at Jerry World.
You like it because you can go there and get some fried Twinkies and
funnel cakes, baby.
The funnel cakes. I mean, all the delectable goodness, the fried Coke, they got fried. If you can fry it, they fry it down there at the State Fair. But you've got, a tilt here that I feel like hasn't been that big in the last handful of years, maybe the last decade, because it's either been one-sided or neither team sometimes were all that good. But Texas ranked in the top 5, and you've got Oklahoma that's also going to be ranked in the top 15 here. Both of these schools, only 2 ranked Big 12 schools, and Oklahoma is 4.5-point dogs at number 3 Texas. Over under in this game 58.5. Dylan Gabriel has been pretty good for Oklahoma. You feel like they've played some pretty good football this year. They've got them going in the right direction. Last year they had a lot of issues. Brent Venables had to clean some stuff up. They had nothing on the shelf, and now you feel like this should be a much more competitive game than maybe we've seen in the past.
Well, last year, I believe the year before, 45 years prior, Oklahoma won all of those games. And then last year, Texas stomped them 49-0. And if you look back last year of Oklahoma, their defense was not the Oklahoma defense that Venables had when he was coaching there. It was bad. And so they are much improved on the defensive side of the ball. To me, and again, you have 2 Heisman candidates, and I say that in the fact that they're both undefeated, right? So, and all quarterbacks are already in the discussion.
That's the first time. I want you to think about this. And because Red River is always early in the year, it's one of their first conference games. And it's during the State Fair week and everything. So it's not like you play 8 or 9 games getting there.
Right.
This is the first time both teams have been undefeated since 2011. Think about that. Over crazy. A decade with what we grew up where Oklahoma generally was getting the better of Texas, but both of these teams were really, really stinking good.
Yeah, they were. I think right now in the series as of late, OU is 16 versus Texas is 8. But again, the reason that happens is you're finally getting the recruits and the coaching, and there's a lot that goes into that. But here's what boils down to me in this game when you got 2 good quarterbacks. It's going to be, whose D do you trust during this game?
It's a
And
great question. Who's D
t-
do you trust? Like,
yeah, who's he? You know,
who's got the better D?
who's got the better D? And I'm gonna say in this, based on their resumes, I'm gonna lean with Texas because of what they did at Alabama and what they did at Kansas. So in regards to who do I trust in the 4.5 points, I'm gonna take Texas. I don't necessarily know about the over because I mean, again, it's a rivalry game, so everything's kind of off the shelf, and you can't say I believe the 49-0 is an outlier, but I probably would take the under, and I probably would lay the points and take Texas simply for the fact of their defense. And I believe that Quinn Ewers is playing at a high level right now.
Quinn Ewers playing really good. I mean, he's definitely playing his way into the Heisman Trophy candidacy. Another big game, and two teams that are undefeated in the SEC East. Mark Stoops beating the Florida Gators 3 years in a row now, if I'm not mistaken. Schlegs is Kentucky down Florida last week. They will be taking on Georgia, and Kentucky controlling its own destiny. They win this game. Now it's a big if, but my goodness, I mean, they would be in the driver's seat to represent the East in the SEC championship. Kentucky, though, 15.5-point dog. But my goodness, against Florida, they were able to pound the rock. They brought in Leary from NC State, so they have an experienced veteran quarterback who's played okay for them this year. And Georgia struggled a lot. I know we didn't really get to it in the show, but they struggled against Auburn last week. So feels like maybe there might be a little window for Kentucky and Mark Stoops, who play a tough and rugged style of football, potentially maybe at least shock the Georgia Bulldogs.
Well, I mean, who doesn't like a shocker? You know what I'm saying? So, Bob, when I'm thinking about this game, we think about Georgia and everybody's talking about their team, right? As a fan, Georgia really hasn't pulled away from the teams that you thought they would, being the number one team in the country, back-to-back national champions. But again, first-year starting quarterback, things have to be adjusted. They normally play great defense, but they didn't run away from South Carolina. Auburn was a close game. So now you have a Kentucky team with Stoops down there that always plays physical and hard.
Yeah.
And like that's what it's going to boil down to. If they can affect Beck and make him one-dimensional, right, stopping the run and make Beck have to beat them, they have opportunity in this game. And I believe it's is it at Kentucky or at Georgia?
I believe I think it's at Georgia.
Okay,
If I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it's in Athens. So it's a night game. It'll be tough. One interesting stat though, as we think about Georgia and how good that they've been over the last handful of years, especially against the rush legs. Like think of all the dudes in the NFL from their front seven. They're giving up 113 yards a game on the ground, which is crazy high for them. A team that prides itself with Kirby Smart, so stinking good, so talented against the run. I don't think that they can beat them. Georgia beat Kentucky last year, 16-6. I mean, Kentucky's played them tough. I just don't know if they have enough. They're going to have to get some breaks for things helping them, but riding high off that emotional win, beating Florida 33-14 and looking good doing it. So give them a lot of credit. And then another one, we got Notre Dame taking on Louisville. So hopefully they continue their winning ways as Louisville's crept into the top 25. So we're taking another short break. And this is our favorite part of every segment. We're going to get a little tailgate talk. We're going to come to you, Schlegs, and have some listener questions. The questions that you all want to know about the Buckeyes. We answer those next for you here on the Bobby Carpenter Show, right here on the Big Play Network. Welcome back into the Bobby Carpenter Show here on the Big Play Network. And it's our favorite time where we answer listeners' questions. And we do it this week in Tailgate Talk, presented to you by Real Truck. And we're going to go to the old Twitter, artist formerly known as Twitter, now known as X. And we're going to throw up our first question here, and a great one. And it's by Pooh Bear 5675. I know Schlegs is loving that Twitter handle right there.
Oh yeah.
Against Notre Dame, Ohio State didn't rotate much at all on the D line. Do you feel like that increases this week?
Yeah, 100%. I think you're going to see a lot of rotation from a lot of groups. Again, because it's about being healthy for the longevity. It's not a sprint; it's a marathon in a season. So I think you're going to see some more rotation up front. I think in that game, they didn't rotate as much because I believe that they felt they had the best personnel out there to be able to stop the run and to apply pressure. So, and you also want to have some continuity while you play the game, because sometimes rotation, yes, we're going to keep guys fresher, but it also doesn't get them into the flow of the game. I definitely felt that as a linebacker, like I liked being in the game. It normally took me a couple of series to get acclimated to what I'm seeing and what they're doing to make the adjustments as we move forward in the game. But I believe you will see some more rotation on the line. And it goes back to the stat that we talked about, Bob. They are getting pressure. The sacks just haven't been there, but they're going to rotate more. What do you think?
Well, it's always a balance, like you said, having your players have the real feel for the game. So they're in the flow. They understand, they know what's happening. Balancing that with also making sure you want your best players on the field the majority of the time. But then there is a cliff where they start to fatigue, and you want them obviously be fresh during the game, but then also you want to have them, like you said, for the duration of the season, help prevent injuries. And so you're trying to balance that, getting younger guys in and rotating. Against Penn State or against Notre Dame, Ohio State, I believe Jack Sawyer and JT Tuimoloau both played every defensive snap at defensive end. They rotated some guys inside. I think they'll probably rotate a lot more against Maryland, because when you're pass rushing, that takes more energy than just stopping the run. And so I think Maryland, they're going to obviously air it out. You're going to want to get your pass rushers fresh on the field. And Caden Curry, Kenyatta Jackson, very, very gifted pass rushers, probably better at that than maybe playing the run early in their careers. So you feel like you're going to get those guys in. I think they will rotate a lot more. And you're at this point now, too, coming off the bye week. You want to keep guys fresh. There is no other reset. So you probably don't want your defensive linemen playing more than 55 plays in a game. But one other piece of this, too, is like there's less plays to go around now due to the clock changes. Back when they used to get 80 plays, 85 snaps, sometimes 90, you need to rotate more. Now, you might be hitting in more the 60s or 70s, so you're going to rotate some, but probably not as much as you ultimately needed to before. So next question, I'm sure we're going to get a lot of these questions here firing away over the next coming weeks as we begin to see more of Michigan, more of Ohio State. But coming at us from Nick Scroggins, how does Ohio State stack up against Michigan, Schlegs?
I mean, right now, I think they're pretty equal. You know, I mean, when we get to the Penn State game, we're going to know more. But that Notre Dame game was very indicative of the Michigan game and what it's going to be. And if you look at last year, you know, we were right there, but we gave up 5 explosive plays. I mean, there was those 2 back-to-back long runs. And again, I think that was fits. I don't necessarily think it was toughness, because in the game, like I was like, man, we were right there. And then it kind of happened like later into the third quarter, and we gave up just significant big plays. You can't do that versus that type of team. And it was also JJ, he was 20%. He was 50%. I believe he was 12 or 24 passing, but they were all big plays, right? So I think as we get into this and Noel starts to figure out what our defense does and what are they capable of, and again, you look at the back end, I just don't see the things that happened in last year's game happening this year, but it is at Michigan. But right now, I think they're pretty equal.
Yeah, there's different teams. I think that they're very close comparably as far as their ability to play, but JJ McCarthy runs a little more. Kyle will run some, just kind of how they go about their offense. You know, Michigan, obviously more of a run first, and Ohio State is a tough, and they'll run it, but obviously they're airing it out a little bit more. I think both teams have pretty darn good defenses now at this point, and that has been proven with what Ohio State did in Notre Dame. We'll see how good they are against the pass here against Maryland, and these are like the two yin and the yang. Notre Dame, obviously physical team, veteran quarterback, can throw it, and Sam Hartman made some nice throws Saturday against Duke, but they wanted to run it, whereas you see Maryland now with Tuilea and what he's trying to do, and they're going to air this thing out and try to throw for 400 yards. So we'll see the secondary tested and how good that defense ultimately can be one more time. Now we'll go to our final question here, Schlegs, from Mike Kallenberg.
Yep.
You guys are elite athletes. Who is somebody you played with or against that was on another level? Somebody you had to stop and watch play. And I know you've been thinking about this, Schlegs, racking that brain. I mean, my easy answer was Anthony Schlegel, just how physical he was. Yeah, you saw the girth and the power and everything he was bringing to the table, especially when he was a nice beefy 255 playing middle linebacker. But is there anybody that you played with, Schlegs, you're like, or against college or the NFL, you're like, wow, like mind explosion?
Ocho Cinco kind of comes to mind, and that as far as his route running, his ability to catch the football, and that's kind of the league. And I just want to throw him out there because I loved how competitive he was in the game. I didn't necessarily like him sometimes in the locker room, but that's because he's an ultra competitor. I would say this is somebody that everybody sleeps on. You know him very well, but I would think probably the most gifted athlete that I've ever been around is from this perspective is Nate Ebner. And the reason I say this
Yeah.
is that you have a guy that was a rugby guy that walked onto Ohio State, that got drafted by the New England Patriots because he is such a freak athlete, played 10 years in the league. Oh, by the way, played a 20-game season and into the playoffs. He won 3 Super Bowls, by the way. But then he goes and makes the rugby sevens Olympic team to then come back and play another full NFL slate. Like, nobody that I know can ever do that. He played 3 seasons in 2 years. Now his body's paying for it now, but as far as like the most gifted, like just kind of athlete that I've ever witnessed and just sports in general would probably be Nate.
Yeah, I would say Nate. I'll throw him in there, obviously, because of what he did. I played with him in New England. 2 guys I never played with, but trained with, and Joey Galloway and Andy Katzenmoyer, both Buckeyes.
Oh man,
yeah,
so
both
good.
dudes are they're on another level. Like God,
another level.
He went to like a different mix when he was building them. Everybody else was getting the stock. Like he goes to like the elite, the premium, the Angels cut over here to be able to make that for those guys. And then 2 guys in the NFL that were very similar to that were DeMarcus Ware and Calvin Johnson, both Hall of Famers and both tremendous players in their own right. So absolutely gifted dudes. Played with a bunch of freaks. Had to see these guys train, and you realize there's sometimes that God doesn't bless everybody with the same things. So they may have got a second helping of grace, if you will. So coming up, and that was our tailgate talk presented to you by Real Truck. So make sure you check them out as well. And coming up, one last break here. Final thoughts, some big news, some happenings with a former teammate of ours at Ohio State this weekend against Maryland. We'll give you the details and the inside scoop on that, all here on the Bobby Carpenter Show, right here on the Big Play Network. Final segment of the show here on the Bobby Carpenter Show on the Big Play Network with my guy, Anthony Schlegel, a former teammate of ours this week at Maryland. Going to get honored. Going to go into the Ohio State Hall of Fame, Schlegs. Nick Mangold, who came in with me, graduated with Schlegs, played in the NFL for 11 years, made 7 or 8 Pro Bowls, was an All-American here at Ohio State. Started, about halfway through, 3/4 of the way through his freshman year, played a lot. It was a phenomenal center from Centerville, Ohio, played at Kettering Alter, and finally getting his final respects here at Ohio State, going in the Hall of Fame. AJ did, about 4 years ago before COVID. So really excited to welcome back our guy, Mr. Nick Mangold, Schlegs, to Ohio State.
Yeah, absolutely. And well-deserved and could potentially be a Hall of Famer. Nick was phenomenal. The beauty of Nick as a center was, one, he is super smart, and he knew the game inside out, can make all the checks and could do it from the jump at Ohio State, but he wasn't like overly physical, but he just knew leverage and he knew body position. Like, he would get his hands on you.
He was a wrestler, Schlegs.
Yeah, he had a really long torso, long arms, and could just get great position. Like, he just knew the game of football, which allowed him to play for so long in the NFL. And I'm super excited that he's now being honored into the Ohio State Hall of Fame, because he is a Hall of Fame person, Hall of Fame husband, dad, and they love him out in New York. I love watching all the stuff that he has on X and what he's doing out there with like barbecue sauce and food and stuff and eating.
A lot of sausage, Schlegs, really saucing it up.
He loves to sauce it.
So excited. When I heard that, I was like, boom.
That's awesome.
I normally do a show Saturday morning on XM. I may have to call off this week, so I want to make sure I can get over there, see him before, and be a part of everything. Because it's such a great experience. We were over there for AJ's when he got to go in, and you realize how special it is. Like, growing up, how you look at Ohio State and you see like Heisman Trophy and all kinds of stuff. Realize like, hey, dude, our quarterback was a Heisman Trophy winner. Like, he was there. He was that dude. Now we play with multiple guys who have been in the Hall of Fame here at Ohio State, and so just to be a part of that, be around those guys. And to be able to share that experience with them, man, I cannot wait. It's going to be tremendous. So really excited for it. Excited to do this show with you, Schlegs. Can't wait.
Hey, love it, man.
To break down Maryland, everything that's going on, continue to preview the rest of the Big Ten. Thank you for watching. It's the Bobby Carpenter Show right here on the Big Play Network.